Morning, everybody. So I know I'm in the tourist show right now, but I wanted to make another quick Miata video because I've been getting a lot of comments from people who are interested in buying a Miata, and a lot of those questions have to do with, oh, this is going to be my first or maybe second car, and they're asking me, is this the right car for me? And I made a video about that. And they're asking me, how can I convince my parents to let me buy one? How can I convince my other stakeholders, wife, girlfriend, whatever, I don't know. Why is the Miata such a great car to start out with? Well, for me, the Miata was my second car, but I think it would be perfect as a first car too. I think first car, second car, the Miata is a perfect choice. And there's a few different reasons why, and that's what I'll go over. The first reason why the Miata is the perfect first car is its cost. So, most people buying their first car are in their teens, probably still in high school, looking around for something that's affordable. When you're buying your first car, if you're like me, cost is the number one thing that's going to determine whether or not you can buy that car. A decent running Miata is a car that you can afford if you work a summer or two at like a restaurant or typical retail high school jobs, $8-10 an hour. If you save up, maybe get some money from your parents, you can afford a decent 90s Miata. In addition to that, you can afford to maintain it. So batteries are pretty cheap, oil changes are pretty cheap, there's tons of parts online. Overall, it's an affordable car, and if you're working a job on the side, even if it's just a minimum wage job plus tips or something like that, it's an affordable car. You can do it. So another great thing about a Miata is that they've pretty much done all the depreciating that they're going to do. If you buy a 1997 or 1996 or older Mazda Miata and you maintain it, it's not going to depreciate too much more. So if you put your money into it, if you could buy it cash, you're not going to lose a ton of value when you want to resell it. So say you want to buy it as a junior or right before your senior year of high school, but then you want to sell it again to have some money for college or whatever, you can pretty much sell it for about the same price that you bought it for if you maintain it well. And that's an important thing to think about, that I think a lot of high schoolers don't think about when they're getting their first car, is how much is this going to cost me when I want to upgrade or sell it and go to college or whatever. That's really what it comes down to when you're, in high school, junior, senior in high school, you're looking for a car to drive to school, a car to drive on the weekends. That's going to be your number one concern, I think. If you're asking your parents for money, they're going to say, well, why don't you buy something more practical? Why don't you buy a nice Ford Focus? We'll help you fund something that's 4 doors, safe. My argument is that in reality, a Mazda Miata is actually gonna keep your kids safer than something like a Ford Focus or a Chevy Malibu. Take your pick of cheap high school cars. Here's my argument. Number one, if you're getting a manual, which you should be, it forces you to stay focused on driving. You can't text and drive manual. It's tricky to be on the phone and drive manual. If you've got an older one, there's no connectivity to have your Bluetooth phone or whatever, so it's hard to have a phone call. It's noisy because of the top, so you really have to be focused on driving when you're driving an older Miata. And I think that's the number one thing that's going to keep kids safe, is staying focused on driving. The other thing is, a Miata forces you to drive defensively. you are one of the smallest cars on the road when you're in a Miata, and so you're constantly aware of the fact that other people can kind of bully you around. So you have to drive defensively when you're in a Miata, just because you're so small. Now, I would argue that that keeps kids safer because you have to you're constantly shifting, you've got to be aware of what's going on around you, there's no cruise control, there's not a ton of radio and there's no screens or anything to deal with, so it'll keep you focused on the road, focused on driving, which to me, and I don't have any statistics to back this up, but to me that seems like it's going to be much safer than a brand new Ford Fiesta, which has Apple CarPlay, and it's an automatic, adaptive cruise control, etc., where driving is kind of a secondary task to all the other things that you're doing. So I would argue that it's actually safer. Now, if you actually get in an accident, okay, I'll grant you that. Getting in an accident in a Miata is probably less safe than a new Fiesta or whatever, but go with me here. Being a two-seater, you can't have too many friends in your car. You can have one other friend. That helps two things. You've got a kid's side benefit and a parent's side benefit. The kid's side benefit is that you don't constantly have friends asking you for rides. So you can give one friend a ride home, but you can't give all your friends a ride home, which is a bit of a benefit. And I'll let you know, when you have a four-door car, or if you have a big SUV that seats 5 or 6 other people are going to be asking you for rides, trust me. If for some reason you do need to give a friend a ride home, or maybe you've got a special lady or special guy that you want to go on a date with, perfect car. You can put the top down, it's fun to drive, it's a sports car, it's just you and them. It's nice. I've gone on a lot of really nice dates with my girlfriend in the Miata, and we've had a lot of fun. Now, the parents' benefit of it being a two-seater is that parents are worried about kids going and hiding in their car and driving out with a bunch of friends and drinking and things like that, or smoking weed, or God forbid having sex. Trust me, you cannot have sex in a Miata. It wouldn't work. And so that could alleviate a lot of parents' concerns too. So I would probably bring that up with my parents if they were still giving me resistance. The other thing about a Miata is that it's just a ton of fun. I can't think of a single other car that's as much fun for the price point that the Miata is. I've driven a lot of cheap cars, and the Miata is by far the most fun per dollar. I guarantee it. So when you're in high school, let's be honest, being cool is very important. And what's cooler than a rear-wheel drive, two-seater sports car with a manual transmission and a convertible roof? I mean, how much better can it get than that? Yes, it does have a bit of a sort of cutesy look to it, but I think if you're confident in yourself, anybody can pull it off. I guess it depends on where you come from, but there are not many places where a convertible sports car isn't a cool car. It's certainly cooler than your standard Ford Focus. The other thing that's fantastic about the Mazda Miata as a first car is it really teaches you how to drive, and it teaches you about car dynamics. So I learned more about driving dynamics in bad weather from owning a Miata for a year than I did from any other car that I've driven. Since it's rear-wheel drive, and since it's small and light, and it's so tactile, the steering is direct, you feel all the bumps in the road, you feel everything that's going on. You learn so much about just driving and how the car reacts to your inputs and how it reacts to certain conditions on the road. And I think that's really important for someone who's still learning how to drive, or learning how to drive well. It's really important to understand how the car is going to react to different conditions and different inputs. And the Miata is an optimal car for learning about vehicle dynamics. Since the Miata is small, it's easy to park. And when you're in a high school parking lot, that's kind of an important thing, because people don't really know how to park that well. So you've got tiny spots where people are over the line, things like that. With the Miata, you can fit right in there. And when people swing their doors open, they're much less likely to ding your door when you've got a tiny little Miata than if you've got a giant SUV or something like that. And the flip side of that is if you swing your door out, you're less likely to hit somebody else's car because your doors aren't even that big. And if somebody does ding your door, it's not that expensive to repair. I had someone scratch the whole entire side of my door, and it cost me like $430. Now, that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot if you're in high school, but it's way cheaper than it would have been if someone had scratched the whole side of my Porsche, trust me. Another concern that a lot of kids and parents might have is that, oh, I live in the Midwest, or I live in the Northeast, or whatever. Maybe I live in Canada where it snows a lot, and I want my kid to have something that'll work well in the snow. Well, I've driven the Miata in the snow, and if you have snow tires, which you should have anyways if you want your car to be safe and reliable in the snow, it's fine. It works better than a front-wheel drive car. It works better than a four-wheel drive car on all-season tires. I have a video about driving the Miata in the snow, and I'll link that in the description too. Check that out. Show that to your parents if they still have objections about it. Trust me, it works. It's surprisingly good in bad weather. Another concern that so many parents are going to have about letting their kids get a sports car as a first car is that, oh my gosh, they're going to be driving so fast, they're going to be going so crazy. But the Miata is not a fast car. I mean, it's quick and it's nippy, but it's not fast. It has 130 horsepower max. If you get one from the 90s, it's going to have even less than that. It doesn't have a ton of torque. Going any faster than 80 miles an hour in a Mazda Miata, especially an old one, is frankly terrifying on the highway, especially when you've got crosswinds. So I don't think anybody should be worried about kids driving way too fast in a Mazda Miata. Trust me, a brand new GMC Terrain is going to be faster in a straight line than a Mazda Miata. I guarantee it. So a kid can get their thrills or whatever by driving the car slowly because it feels like it's going faster than it is. And that's because it's lower to the ground, it's smaller, noisier, gives you all that feedback, so it feels faster than it's actually going. The Mazda Miata gets pretty good gas mileage. It's a small 4-cylinder, pretty aerodynamic. As long as you're not driving too crazy, which I did, you can get almost 30 miles per gallon out of it. It's not that hard if you drive it reasonably. The Miata is also one of the best cars in the world to learn about car maintenance and repair. There's only a few cars in the world where there are so many parts available, so many videos online to see, and such good prices on all those parts because they're so widely available. The only other cars I can think of are maybe like a Mustang, where there's so much information out there on how to do your own repairs and do your own maintenance. And I think that's really important for kids these days, because a lot of us don't get exposed to sort of mechanical, get your hands dirty work. And I think that's an important thing to learn. Learn how the machine that you're driving actually works and learn how to fix it yourself. And that'll go a long way in life. So that's all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you can, for those of you out there trying to convince your parents to let you buy a Miata, show them this video. So tell me what your parents have asked you when you've brought this up to them. What concerns did your parents have about buying a Miata? Or what concerns do you personally have about buying a Miata as a first car, second car, that sort of thing? let me know. I'd be curious to see if there's anything that I missed or anything that I might want to include in a follow-up. So write it in the comments below, and I'll make sure I check those out. If you want to see more videos about the pros and cons of owning a Miata, if you want to see more videos about just cool cars in general, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. One of the first things that I realized I didn't know was where the OBD2 plug was. I took it to AutoZone and asked them to see why the check engine light was on in my car.